They say wealth is a fortress, a shield against the world. But for me, it was a prison made of glass and steel. My name is Adrian Whitlock. I am 33. I was born into privilege, the only son of Henry Whitlock, a tycoon whose name was synonymous with power in every corner of Seattle. My mother, Eleanor, passed away when I was 6, leaving behind a void that no amount of luxury could fill. It started with a dream. I don't know why I was dreaming of her, but it felt like the nightmare had crawled into my mind, slithering through the cracks of my subconscious. In my dream, I was walking down a long, dark corridor, my footsteps echoing with every move I made. The air was thick, heavy, like I was wading through something dense, almost suffocating. The walls around me seemed to close in with every step, growing tighter, darker. There was someone, just out of sight, but I could feel her presence. A pull, a force urging me forward. I didn't want to move, but my legs carried me anyway, like I was drawn to whatever waited at the end of the hallway. The silence was oppressive. My own breath felt too loud. Then I heard her voice, soft, haunting.
Come to me.
I tried to look around, but the darkness only deepened, swallowing the world around me. I couldn't see her face. I couldn't see anything but the shadows stretching, growing longer, thicker. I reached out, but just as I turned the corner, the world around me began to crumble. The walls fell apart like sand, and the ground beneath me shattered, as if the whole place were falling into nothing. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. And then, through the swirling darkness, there was a figure, a woman. Her eyes glowed, and when she smiled, I felt it pierce straight through me. The world seemed to bend around her, warping. Her smile wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It was something else, something chilling. I tried to move, to run, but I couldn't. The ground had vanished, the corridor had vanished. All that was left was her, standing in the darkness, her gaze locking onto mine.
Wake up, Adrian.
She whispered.
Wake up.
I woke up with a start, gasping for air, my heart pounding in my chest. The nightmare lingered in the corners of my mind. The remnants of her twisted smile still burned behind my eyelids. I rubbed my face, trying to shake it off, but it stuck with me. That feeling. I wasn't alone. There, at the foot of my bed, stood a woman. I hadn't heard her enter. She had just appeared, as if out of nowhere. My door was locked. I didn't remember inviting anyone in. She was holding a cup of coffee, the steam rising in soft tendrils. Her beauty was unsettling. There was something about her, something that didn't sit right, but I couldn't look away. She was radiant, too radiant, as if her presence filled the room with a light of its own.
Good morning, Mr. Adrian.
She said, her voice soft but smooth, almost coaxing.
I've brought you your coffee.
I opened my mouth to speak, to demand how she had gotten in, to shout at her for opening my door without permission. But the words caught in my throat. I couldn't do it. I tried to force my mouth to speak, but her eyes held me in place. You're the new maid? I asked, my voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. She smiled, a small, knowing smile.
Yes. I was hired by your staff.
Her words felt like a lie, but I couldn't place why. There was a pull in her gaze, something that made my chest tighten. My anger dissolved as quickly as it had come, replaced with something I couldn't name. She moved closer, placing the cup on the table beside my bed. Her hand brushed against mine, and I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through me. It wasn't just a touch. It was alive, like the very air between us had come to life. She looked at me again, her eyes piercing, and I felt myself lost in them, caught in something I couldn't understand.
Is there anything else I can do for you, Mr. Adrian?
She asked, her voice like velvet. I wanted to answer, to ask her why she was here, why I was suddenly so weak in her presence. But before I could speak, she was gone, as silently as she had arrived. I stared at the door she had closed behind her, still feeling the echo of her touch, her gaze. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew, somehow, that I would never forget her. As days passed, Elise became an addiction I couldn't escape. Her presence in my house was like a drug, dangerous, intoxicating, and utterly consuming. She wasn't just beautiful. She was temptation itself, draped in silk and shadows. Her dresses clung to her body like a second skin, the low-cut necklines exposing the perfect curve of her breasts, while the fabric hugged her waist and flared over her hips in a way that made my mouth go dry. When she walked, her legs seemed to glide, smooth and endless, every step a deliberate tease. She knew exactly what she was doing, and I hated how much I wanted her. She would catch me watching her and smile, a sly, knowing smile that said she had me exactly where she wanted me. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper when she spoke, as if every word was meant just for me.
Do you need anything else, Adrian?
She would ask, leaning closer, the scent of her perfume making my head spin. I would nod, unable to form a coherent answer, my eyes locked on the hint of cleavage she didn't bother to hide. She was everywhere, arranging flowers in the dining room, bending just enough to show the curve of her backside. Standing in the kitchen, her lips wrapped around a spoon as she tasted something she was cooking. Every move, every glance was a calculated effort to unnerve me. And it was working. I wanted her. I wanted her in ways I couldn't even admit to myself. It wasn't just lust, it was obsession. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. My work, my company, the empire I had built with my own hands. It all paled in comparison to the fire she had ignited in me. I knew it was dangerous. I knew she was dangerous, but I didn't care. I would have her, at any cost. One stormy evening, the heavens opened with a relentless downpour, the rain lashing against the vast glass windows of my home. The sound was a symphony of nature's fury, a backdrop that both calmed and stirred something within me. Inside, the warmth of the kitchen glowed softly, contrasting the chaotic world outside. Elise stood at the counter, her back to me, a vision of elegance and temptation. The black dress she wore clung to her every curve, the dim light tracing the delicate lines of her body. Her movements were deliberate, each shift of her hips pulling me closer like a magnet I couldn't resist. I crossed the distance silently, standing just behind her, the scent of her perfume, rich and intoxicating, making my head swim. She didn't flinch when I placed my hands on her waist, but I felt the faintest hitch in her breath.
Adrian.
She murmured, her voice soft, teasing.
You're playing with fire.
Then let me burn. I whispered, my lips brushing against her ear. My hands slid lower, over the fabric of her dress, and then upward, gathering it in my fingers. Slowly, I raised it, revealing smooth, porcelain skin and the deep red of her lingerie. She didn't stop me. Her silence was permission, her stillness an invitation. She stood there, breathtaking in her crimson bra and matching panties, her long legs encased in sheer pantyhose. The sight of her stole the air from my lungs. Her beauty wasn't just physical, it was overwhelming, an irresistible force that made me forget every shred of self-control. I reached around her, unclasping her bra with practiced ease, letting it fall to the floor. Her bare skin was warm under my touch, soft and impossibly smooth. My hands moved over her, cupping her breasts, feeling her body respond as her breath grew unsteady. She leaned back into me, her head resting against my shoulder, her lips parting as if she were about to speak but couldn't find the words.
Elise.
I whispered against her neck, my voice rough with desire. One hand trailed downward, over her stomach, slipping beneath the waistband of her panties. The moment my fingers grazed her, she caught my wrist, her grip firm and unyielding.
No.
She said, her voice low but resolute. She turned to face me, her dark eyes meeting mine with a mix of intensity and restraint.
Not here. Not like this.
Her words struck me like a cold wind, but her gaze held something deeper. A promise that this wasn't rejection, but a delay, a tantalizing game she was controlling with perfect precision. She stepped away, adjusting her dress with a calmness that only added to her allure.
Go finish your wine, Adrian.
She said.
This isn't the right time.
I watched her return to the counter, as if nothing had happened. While I stood there, every nerve in my body alight. She had me completely under her spell, and for the first time in my life, I didn't mind losing control. One evening, as we sat in the lounge, the rain tapping softly against the windows, Elise leaned against the armrest of the sofa, her hair spilling over her shoulder like a dark river. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes, and said,
You should come to my home sometime.
The words were simple, but the way she said them, it was almost a challenge, an invitation laced with something unspoken. I paused, pretending to consider it, but the truth was, I couldn't resist anything she asked.
Where's your home?
I asked. She tilted her head, as though debating how much to reveal.
Not far from here. Just outside the city, at the edge of the old forest.
Something about the way she described it felt odd, but I didn't question it.
And why would I visit?
I teased, trying to mask the eagerness in my voice. Her smile deepened, her eyes narrowing slightly.
Because I want you in my bed at my house. Just once.
When? I asked, trying to sound casual.
Tonight.
She said, her tone dripping with invitation. And just like that, she left the conversation dangling, shifting her attention to the book in her hands as though nothing had happened. That night, after dinner, Elise appeared at my bedroom door. The sight of her stopped me mid-thought. She stood there, framed by the dim light of the hallway, wearing a dress so sensual it clung to every curve of her body, shimmering faintly in the low glow. Her hair fell in cascading waves, her lips a deep crimson, and her eyes glimmered with a mix of seduction and mystery.
It's time.
She whispered, her voice soft but commanding. The rain was still falling as we got into my car. The night felt alive, charged with an energy I couldn't quite place. The rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield was the only sound at first, but as we drove further, the world around us seemed to shift. The roads were winding and narrow, flanked by thick trees that swayed ominously in the storm. Shadows danced across the beams of the headlights, forming shapes that flickered at the edge of my vision. Every so often, I would glance at Elise. She sat there, calm and composed. Her lips curved into a faint smile that only deepened the enigma surrounding her. The hem of her dress rode up slightly, revealing her long, toned legs. Despite the eerie atmosphere outside, her beauty had a way of grounding me, of convincing me that no matter what lay ahead, it would be worth it. When we finally reached her house, it was as if the forest parted to reveal its secret. The structure loomed before us, dark and imposing, its jagged edges and Gothic design giving it the appearance of something plucked from a nightmare. The windows were narrow slits of darkness, and a strange mist swirled around the base of the building as though it were alive. Inside, the house was just as unsettling. The air was thick, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and something metallic. The furniture was old, intricately carved with faces and symbols I couldn't understand. Candles flickered in corners, their flames casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. But with Elise by my side, I ignored it all. In her room, the bed was large and draped with heavy velvet. We didn't talk much. There was no need. The storm outside seemed to echo the intensity of our night together. Her touch was electric, her body a map of temptation that I explored with reckless abandon. Around 3 o'clock, I woke abruptly. The room was dark except for the faint light of the storm outside. I reached for her, but the space beside me was empty. A cold chill ran down my spine as I sat up and called her name. I found her in a room at the end of the hallway, one I hadn't noticed before. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, the air was heavier, colder. She was sitting on the floor, a circle of black candles surrounding her. In front of her was a large photo of me, and her lips moved in silent chants. A raven perched above her on a wooden beam, its glowing eyes fixed on me like a sentinel. Behind her stood a statue of something ancient and grotesque, a demon, its features twisted into a snarl. "Elise," I whispered, my voice trembling. She didn't look at me, her hands moving deliberately as she reached for the edge of the photo. Just as she began to tear it, a sharp, searing pain shot through my chest. I gasped, clutching at my shirt, and fell to the ground. Everything went black. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the window. I was back in the bedroom where we had fallen asleep together. The storm was gone, replaced by the quiet of early morning. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream, but then I saw the note on the bedside table. It was written in her elegant, looping handwriting.
Adrian, I owe you the truth. I am a practitioner of black magic, and I was hired by one of your business rivals to destroy you. To weaken your body, mind, and spirit. I was succeeding, but you are unlike anyone I've met. Wise, kind. I couldn't go through with it. To break the spell, I had to bring you to my home. The process is complete now, and you are free from my influence. But because of this, I cannot see you again. You are stronger without me, and I cannot bear to hurt you further. Know this, I will miss you, Adrian. More than you'll ever know. Elise.
I read the note over and over, my heart aching with every word. She was gone, leaving nothing but the faint scent of her perfume and the memory of a night I would never forget. Even now, I can't stop thinking about her, the woman who betrayed me, saved me, and disappeared into the shadows.